Hello team and welcome back to another Line War cast. This is a 1v1 between Barracuda in blue and Animorph in red. Both of these players certainly know what they're doing. Barracuda is going to spawn on the bottom left by this trade route between these two towns, which should set up blue quite well economically. And the only problem for blue is that in order to set up that trade route, it will have to be defended from red, who is spawned very close. On this map, both players on the left-hand side. Animorph could build a dock here at some point to move infantry off of this part of the map, because Barracuda is blocking any sort of expansion possibility for red. The one problem for red here is that there's really no refinery, no energy source that is open to take right now. This would be the only spot that Animorph can really get, and it would require a boat to go cap that first. And given how close both players are, it would be a little bit risky for red to invest in any navy at the moment. So at this point, Animorph's just got to build up a land, army, and then and deal with whatever blue is deciding to do. It's 3 factories and 3 barracks from both players, and both players going for artillery. So Barracuda's not going to build this trade route quite yet, or any part of the infrastructure there, the towns or the ports. And this is it's going to look like it'll be just a huge fight. Both players are going to ramp up on 6 production facilities and then go for it. Animorph's barracks are finished first, or rather, so it's actually 2 factories and 4 barracks for Animorph. I can't count. I definitely can't count. And 3 factories, 3 barracks for Barracuda. So Barracuda will have more artillery in this game. Neither player is probably going to make any SAMs to begin this, because Animorph also knows that there's no energy source for blue here anywhere close. The closest things for Barracuda are going to be these 3 refineries, mostly these 2 because they're on land in the bottom center of the map. Move command from Animorph to try to bust through this entrenchment and get behind the infantry. Nice little flank of this one squad as well. This can be very expensive. This can end the game very quickly if this push from red does nothing. And it can end the game very quickly if the push from red wins the game. There's another sort of fallback defensive position for Barracuda here. All of the buildings are in the mountains, so that it can't be used for the units to dig in. But there's still a little bit of a buffer. The red infantry isn't quite through the entrenchments yet. Only now are they really getting through it. And once the red infantry is behind these entrenched units, the defensive bonus that you get from the entrenchments doesn't come into effect at all. Animorph changing to a capture command, feeling confident that this position is overrun. And Animorph also adding a farm, which is actually a big deal. It depends on what Barracuda is going to do for eco. So blue's electing to cap with 6 infantry here. I guess there's a 7th one just chilling on that mountain. But blue's going to actually take territory, and Animorph has no option to take territory. There's these ones right here that red could take, but obviously there's no real long-term, no longevity to this plan. Barracuda has the rest of the map to cap, and Animorph really only has 3 territories. So it might make sense for Animorph to just continue to play this as a all-in some sense, and just keep putting down production facilities. Because besides a dock, a commando drop by building an airport for red won't really help. This refinery is relatively far away. The transport boat wouldn't be able, or transport plane wouldn't be able to reach there in one go. And this is what I'm talking about, a little bit of a buffer zone for blue. With the entrenchments now this close to the production, sometimes the blue units, if they're in the entrenchments, they can start derping out when other units start to bump into them, kind of like what you're seeing here for this artillery piece. And it's kind of anyone's guess if this is going to work. You're seeing what I'm seeing. I think this is going to go well for red. in the medium term. Income-wise, it's 372 for red and 360 for blue. That farm being part of the difference here. And what would be huge for Barracuda is if blue feels that they can invest a barracks to produce even more capping infantry. This is going to stalemate a little bit. Animorph's going to build another farm because there's now time. Or it seemed like there was going to be time now that Barracuda's disbanding that entrenchment. It would appear from Red's point of view that blue wants to actually push here. Animorph sees 2 factories, 2 barracks. This barracks is not in the forest or the mountain range, and I believe that's why it's spotted and these 2 are not. And from Barracuda's point of view, sees all the production except for this 1 barracks. And this is just a good old-fashioned artillery slugfest. Neither player is making any deviation from the plan to just build artillery out of the factories. Not that there would be a better alternative. I know I've seen some folks theorize that, well, why don't you just build, you know, 2 or 3 tanks here? And you, even though you won't have the energy to continue running those tanks, you could just send them into the battle here. They'd tank a lot of damage and potentially be able to break your enemy's position. And it might have merit. It makes sense on paper. So I said this was going to go well for red in the medium term. I'm still going to hold to that idea. I think it might be. Like, I'll spoil it. I don't understand how this game goes on for 40 minutes if somehow red doesn't push out of this position. Because right now the momentum a little bit is in, I'd say, Barracuda's favor. There's some capping going on, whereas for Animorph, besides these 2 farms, there's been no capping. 380 income for blue and 394 for red, so I suppose these 2 farms are actually doing their job quite well. And it might just be the situation where Barracuda feels invested to continue to put units to the front here and not back up and just go full defensive mode. Blue might feel that they have red on the ropes. But of course, if Animorph can continue building the farms and ultimately get off this peninsula, either by pushing through the mountains and winning or expanding to the rest of the map. I mean, there's so much map. And it's all open field generally in the center of the map. This is huge for Barracuda. This might change how this game goes. Because that barracks in the south really makes it official that, like, red is a little bit on a timer. Barracuda will start to get enough infantry that blue will be able to cap through here. This mountain range is going to be a little bit problematic. The infantry are going to take a long time to cap these 3 territories, but once they're through this choke, that entire northern part of the map is open for blue to take. This is what I'm talking about with the defensive lines. They're a little bit derpy. These artillery pieces get dug in, but they are already being attacked by red infantry, and Animorph's adding another barracks as well, and Barracuda can see this. And now this is problematic for Barracuda. There's no real place to back up without giving up most of these buildings. But there's not really enough time to dig in the open field either. I keep zooming out to see what's going on over here, but I guess it's not really going to be all that quick, is it, with just 1 barracks? It is a good long-term play, though. Okay, this is good. You can see the range advantage of artillery pieces once they're in entrenchments. Entrenchments very strong if you're an artillery piece. But they take a while to dig in, and as this artillery piece digs in, Yeah, you can see what happens. Like, I don't understand. This artillery piece is trying to bump over to this defensive line. It's just unfortunate, like, unit movement. That is, Barracuda can't control at all, besides just getting rid of these defensive lines and not having these units do this derpy stuff. But the day that, like, if artillery pieces didn't just rush to the entrenchment and they instead started firing, still would be pretty bad for blue. This is a lot of artillery for Animorph. It's now got to the point where it's kind of blobbing. A common thing, criticism of the game, I feel, is folks say, well, artillery blobs are just super OP. And in a situation like this where both players have kind of committed to an all-in, like, it is, I think, you know, if you have the artillery blob advantage, it's very difficult for your opponent to stop that without any different tech, whether that's tanks or just overwhelming units. Third farm for Animorph is completing, so red's going to be ahead on eco, 420 for blue and 416 for red, so I lied to you. And I think that really just shows the strength of what's going on here. Like, Barracuda is going to cap so much quicker because of this one barracks, but now it's 5 barracks and 2 factories for red. I like this barracks from Barracuda, or rather I like the spirit of building more producers to try to defend this push. But I think the defensive lines have, like, this is great. These 2 artillery pieces in this defensive line, as long as they don't get bumped by these infantry. Sometimes the infantry will bump them out of position. And this is the sort of spot where once one of the factories goes down, it becomes infinitely more difficult for blue to actually hold this, because then it's a even factory advantage and 3 barracks, or rather 5 barracks instead of just the, you know, 4. It adds up over time. Animorph's adding another farm. There's a town that Animorph could build right beside this port as more eco. Then the infantry is very slowly getting to the choke. I disabled the line commands because you can tell both players are ferociously just fighting at this front. The factory certainly will go down. This is an interesting moment because it depends on what Barracuda would like to do. Blue can continue to try to push up to the front of these mountain range, and keep fighting the artillery pieces, or just back up entirely to some point in the mountain and see if that can hold. The problem is that these artillery pieces are ultimately, if the defensive line is just infantry, they're going to outrange the infantry in the defensive line, so it'll just delay the inevitable. It's a very difficult spot for blue. I don't think there's like any super good option. And top down, it's a lot more blue territory rather than red territory. Income-wise, it's 458 for Animorph and 470 for Barracuda. So the first factory did explode. When Barracuda gets 300 money here, I wonder if it's going to be a factory somewhere in the back. I don't like an airport would be a tough sell just because of the aforementioned energy problems, and it is a factory in the back. It's still the game proposition still stands. If blue can stop Animorph from getting through this mountain range and ending the game right now, then blue will outpace red on eco. Especially now that there are almost like 3 full infantry squads that are about to get up into this open field. And you already see those pre-drawn lines from Barracuda. Yeah, this is like a perfect example. This one artillery piece is happily in the defensive line and then just decides to rebalance to the other one or something. Certainly a tough look for blue to see here. Animorph's money, 222. My bet is that Animorph's going to build a town next. Instead of a dock. Yeah, oh my gosh. Okay. Well, Animorph built a dock. Animorph cut production on the barracks and the factory to make sure that I would look like a fool, really, is what it comes down to. I thought this for sure was going to be a town. This is all, I mean, it makes a lot of, I guess it makes a lot of sense. If Animorph can get some infantry up across and, you know, deal with Blue's army here, at least get a presence on the mainland, then it doesn't make this push as, like, all in, and it needs to work for Red to win the game. Eco-wise, it's 468 for Animorph, who's making plus 55 a minute, and it's 510 for Barracuda, making 167 a minute. And Barracuda really starting to cap a lot of territories here. The mountains are all done with, so the blue infantry doesn't have to stop to cap, they just get to walk right through the mountains. But there's no solution for this. Building more factories in the back for Barracuda makes sense. But Red's not losing all that many units at this point because there's nothing really from blue that's attacking in any impactful numbers. Animorph's actually building some SAMs just in case, now that there is a large enough arty blob. And this is the plan. There's going to be one boat that is going to transport these 4 infantry across, and then the next boat is going to be a destroyer, I believe, that is going to go cap this energy well. This barracks just looks phenomenal. If you're thinking about macro, this is a lot of territory. But if, again, it maybe doesn't really matter at this point in the game. 530 income for blue and 488 for red. Animorph's still not making all that much money. And losing all these buildings is tough, but you can see the map presence that blue has. And if Barracuda can stop this landing from Animorph, even if you think about, say, you know, Barracuda only is able to hold this part of the map in this choke, and blue plugs this up and then caps the rest of the map, it still is overwhelmingly in Barracuda's favor on the eco. What did we just hear? We heard a farm? I thought it was a farm or something? Yeah, it's okay, it's a mining site, that's what it is. I didn't even realize Animorph still has these 2 mining sites in the mountains. The reason that these would be picked last for Animorph is because units that, or producers that are built, structures in general that are built in mountains and forests, they take 50% longer to build. Airport from Barracuda, I really like this. And as tough as the momentum seems, I think Barracuda still has a shot in this game. 498 income for red and 550 for blue. I mean, at this point, any defensive lines that blue is making is just delaying the inevitable. The switch to helicopters, presumably this is going to be helicopters, it could be strikers or something, will be quite strong. It'll just mean that there'd be less artillery that can be produced from Animorph. There's already 3 SAMs, there's going to be 4 soon. Unless now Animorph's just switched entirely back into artillery production. Instead of going 1 factory going SAMs, 1 factory going artillery. And it's strikers from Barracuda. I personally prefer strikers. I like the striker play. And off of 2 airports, if Barracuda has the energy and can keep, buy enough time to build all these strikers, they can do a lot of damage to an army that looks like this. Even if there were 5 SAMs here, 2 full airports of strikers, 10 strikers, could definitely deal with 5 SAMs. And this is a very slow-moving army in general. The artillery is a very slow unit compared to an infantry or a tank. So it'll take a while for this blob of red arty to actually get to even this choke, let alone the 2 airports that are now both building strikers. Barracuda's vision doesn't quite see that Animorph has landed here yet. There's no producers for Animorph here. And Animorph's building more missile boats. It's all missile boats. 3rd one on the way. That will be huge when Animorph has enough numbers and the missile boats can kind of park out in this little bay. It'll stop the strikers from being very effective. And this is your top-down look of the map. 632 income for blue and 540 for red. Animorph needs to buy this refinery as well. That costs 260. And Barracuda's building the factory in the back. The reason it might be impactful, Animorph's money is pretty decent at this point. 187 a minute, now 197. General rule of thumb is you want this about like 300, which Barracuda is hitting perfectly. But it's probably discouraging as Barracuda actually see this much red territory. Seeing the first barracks is sort of problematic. And the refinery's already built for Barracuda, or being constructed. By the time this artillery is actually here, there should be about 4 strikers, maybe 6. You can see that Animorph's not capping any of this territory, instead electing to try to rush to the choke. This is artillery vision. Cumulatively, they still can't see any of the units in the forest. Only now, when they get on this mountain, do they see it. And I think this is actually a bigger deal than it would appear, that Animorph's decided to attack move these artillery pieces, which is the correct call, I think, given the situation. The longer that these artillery pieces took to get here, the more time there would be strikers that get in position to do something, and then also these artillery pieces for blue. The artillery count is so important. This is a nice attempt to run by from blue, but there's enough red infantry to actually stop that barracks from being destroyed. 2 more barracks in the north for Barracuda. Huge fan of this. And still so much territory on the far right of the map. So the SAMs are very far behind. SAM's also going to be very slow through the mountains and the forest, so they won't be able to cover this artillery. And the refinery for blue finishes at the perfect time for the strikers. This is Barracuda's vision. 4 strikers don't have very good vision, clearly. But as the striker numbers grow, it will get better. Let's see if Animorph is going to start sending the missile boats down to the south. Is that this barracks was actually almost destroyed. That's a lot more damage than I thought there would be. And broadly, I think it's a good call for Barracuda to actually try to target that barracks, because you really don't want your opponent to actually get a foothold on the mainland. Especially because Barracuda, well, Animorph's on relatively low eco. It's starting to look a lot better. 2 more mining sites. I didn't even see this northern one either. The camouflage mining sites. Both of them on the way for Animorph, who is at 300 income per minute at this point. 692 total income, and 692 total income for Barracuda. But Barracuda has a lot of investment of barracks in the north. It comes down to whether Barracuda can actually stop Animorph here. If Barracuda can, I think this looks very good for blue, because long term, 5 barracks, if all these units are going to the left and they pool up, should be able to knock Animorph off of at least like these 2 producers. And Barracuda still has a few capping units that are going eastward. I'm swinging the camera around, my apologies. So the strikers get off some good shots, but they're going to retreat as soon as they see the SAM fire, which makes a lot of sense. It gives Barracuda some more time to actually dig in. And something sort of... I wonder how this is actually going to work, because the strikers have to take off in the direction of these arrows. And they have to land in the direction of the arrows as well. So on the way back to the airport, they're not going to run over the missile boats. But Barracuda will have to craft the attack lines in such a way, potentially like here, I guess, in this way, to try to get the strikers to veer off to the right. And I don't think they're going to do that. They're probably going to always fly over the missile boats, which is unfortunate. Love this submarine pen from Barracuda. And this is very stealth. Even if these 3 missile boats kind of showed up here, they probably wouldn't be able to see that submarine pen. The factory Animorph is building here is a big deal, because all the artillery pieces from it will counter the infantry force from blue. And all of a sudden, I don't know what happened with this defensive line. Okay, this is a smart play from Barracuda, because the plan is now actually just to send 8 strikers, or whatever this is, 9 strikers at the missile boats. They're not really going to all hit at the exact same time. Rather, the first one will go down nearly immediately. But the rest of the strikers will be able to reset this boat count. And this many strikers can also take out this many SAMs. It won't be that pretty. And it might actually not be in time. Maybe this army is just going to do it. Eco-wise, 806 for red, 752 for blue. And Animorph continuing to eco. If blue can break through, this is very good. But I don't think there's quite enough infantry here to actually get the job done. And this first artillery piece for red is getting its gun put on it right now. So it will be ready for the second wave of infantry. Nice disband from Animorph of the defensive line to try to defend. And the strikers unfortunately don't launch all at once. And I think this turns into GG now. The 3 barracks are going to cement it. There's going to be a lot of red infantry that's going to show up here and cap all this territory back. And this is the top-down look. Okay, well this is good. Barracuda is going to probably destroy both of those buildings at this point. But losing the airports is going to be a little bit too much. That's too, I think, unfortunately, a little bit too expensive. GG. Well played both. I think that was a very good game. Clearly. But both those players know what they're doing. Well played to both of them. And thank you to, I think Animorph posted this in the match replays channel in the Discord. You can go to the Discord if you'd like to learn more about the game. Check out the Steam page. Thanks for the support on the videos, however you choose to do so. Watching them is more than enough. And have a wonderful night, day, weekend, breakfast, whatever it is, wherever you are. Peace, folks.